I think if they have all this old stuff.
So by the time he gets in again.
Yeah, just what we got in the packet. They're saying they didn't change it. Yeah. They have to get the ones.
And you're still up.
Okay.
I'm not sure what color they want.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Get a gentleman's agreement. He said, let Sandy sign everything.
Have a sheet here for the water bill. I don't think so. I'm only like here. Where you going? Just have to try it for the water. Oh, okay. I see you walking and I go. Yeah, I saw you walking. I was on that freeway. Guys,
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody get a chance to audit the bills? I see that they're all initialed, so this is the only one. Harold, did you get a chance to sign this one? That's something I don't know what we only have.
We've reviewed the bills and found them good to be paid.
Okay, thank you. This is the time where we open it up to the public for comment. Please keep your comments directed to the board. And let's remember our neighbors and try to be civil. So I'll call and use your hand raised. Go ahead.
I just have a quick question, pertaining to my neighbor up on Lynn Road. Her dad, I was pretty close to her dad, after, moving up there, quite a while ago now. He recently passed and, she's trying to still, get her junkyard, permit from the town, to continue using her father's, permit that he had. She and her father both took care of this about a year ago before he had gotten sick and thought they had it all settled. Apparently not. She came down to reapply for her permit, or actually pay for her permit. And she was told it wasn't transferable, which I'd never heard of such a thing. However, I did help her go through the process the town advised me to do with her, and go through the application and whatever. And again, she was told, once she handed the application in, she was told that that individual would have to do his homework, and it would be quite some time, if at all, that she would get her permit. So I am wondering what it is, what's the holdup on this, and what it is that she has to
Well,
do.
you're in luck, because I spoke to Andy earlier, and he said he was gonna look into it, and
Right, so there is a local law in the town dealing with junkyards, and so we start with that. And there is a provision in the town's local law that indicates any junkyard permit that's issued, the license, is personal to the applicant and not assignable. So when you read that, if there was a question about, well, if the permit was in the name of Dad, it's not, it's personal to him, it wasn't assignable. So I don't know the full record on this, but presuming for the moment that the license or the permit was in his name individually, it would need to, under this law, go through the review process again. So what is that? It is an application to this board. Okay? The zoning board reviews it just to make sure it's appropriate at that location. So that's the first step. I've reviewed the procedure here. And then the zoning board issues a certificate saying that use is appropriate in that zoning district. It comes back to this board, clearly in conjunction with the building department, right, reviewing that. This board does need to hold a public hearing. Okay? They receive any public comment. There are certain standards under the law to review. They would use those and then determine whether to grant the license or not. If granted, it is an annual license. You're correct on that. And thereafter, there's just an annual fee because at that point, presuming it's issued, it's in the name of that permit or license holder. And thereafter, it's just an annual fee. But if someone new, and I know it's a daughter, but if someone new, a new permittee is proposed, this local law does require it to go through that process. So it is a town board review process.
So would this be grandfathered in?
Unfortunately, there's nothing in this town's local law dealing with grandfathering. That's not to say that the board should not take into consideration that this was an existing facility that did have a permit. That should be a relevant factor when the board reviews the application, but unfortunately, there's no grandfathering or assigning even to a family member.
So
The
as
way the
far
law
as,
was written.
I contacted the state about it, as far as they're concerned, there is a grandfather clause as far as the junkyard being there for so many years. And if the town doesn't issue a permit, they can issue a permit for the junkyard use or a salvage yard use, as long as they deem it permittable, as long, even if the town doesn't.
And what state agency did you contact?
DMV.
DMV,
Yep.
okay. Well, we can certainly look at that.
Mhm.
There may be other state regulatory requirements for junkyard. This is certainly under the town's local law. It is in the nature of almost a zoning or a local law issue. And that's the procedure at the local level that this board would need to go through.
so would this board have to ask the zoning board for a recommendation?
Well, actually, I'm going to read you the section that deals with that. Application for the license and the certificate of approved location in the town shall be made in writing to the town board. So that application initially comes to the town board. And the application shall be accompanied by a certificate from the zoning board that the proposed location is not within an established district restricted against such uses or otherwise contrary to the prohibitions in any zoning district. So when you read that, it would appear that the applicant goes to the zoning board saying, I'm making application to the town board for the junkyard license. I need a certificate from this board. There's no procedure spelled out for that. It's simply in the nature of a recommendation, a certificate from the zoning board. You include that in the application to the town board, and then it's a town board procedure to schedule a public hearing. And there's timeframes in here.
Jeff, on the paperwork that she got from Tiffany, was that an application?
That was an application, and that was to whom, either the property owner or whoever is in charge of that property. So it doesn't have to be the property owner, according to that application.
My suggestion would be to have her come in Monday and see Tiffany so that she can get on the agenda for the zoning board, so they can give us a recommendation so we can act on it at the next town board meeting.
Okay.
And our planning board, our zoning board chairman's here, so if you want to talk to him about how it's done, I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you.
Not chairman anymore, but it's,
I'd like to put one comment on it.
the next meeting.
As the code enforcement officer, Mr. Arnold, junkyard, I inspected it 7 years. In those 7 years, I gotta tell you, and I inspected all the junkyards. That was one of the finest, well-kept, security. I never once had to complain. Whatever it's worth. It's not an eyesore like some others have been.
Does that answer? Everything?
Yeah, I'm just, to reapply for the junker that's been there since, I don't know, in the fifties, I have a hard time.
Well, you're not applying for the junkyard, you're applying for an operator's.
A permit, right.
I'll go one step further. When I reviewed this law, when it was adopted, it looks like it was 2003. Even for existing junkyards, they were grandfathered in only for a very short time and then needed to make an application for this license, even if they had been in existence since the 50s. And I would presume that's why this facility had this license, even though it may have been there from the 50s, because the law required it. And it does require, if there's a new operator or applicant, that they go through the process again.
And where is that state? 'Cause I've looked everywhere to try to find.
Sure. So this is in the town's code. I think the full town's code is available
Yeah.
online. You go to chapter 145.
Okay.
And it's titled junkyards, and it's all spelled out right there.
Yeah, I've read it through and through, and it's, the one on mine has nothing to do with reapplying for a permit.
No, but what it does say is that approval is personal to the applicant and is not assignable. So as soon as the permit holder, in this case, is deceased, you can't assign that permit. So that's unfortunately, that's the way the law was written.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, Mr. King.
Is there anyone else?
No, you got it.
All right. My name is Lee King. I reside at 317 Snake Hill Road. And I wanted to use this opportunity to state that I am the person who authored the petition that was titled Soil Stabilization and Materials Remediation Proposal for 290 Snake Hill Road. And it is a bit of a contested issue. I spoke with town supervisor about this before this meeting, and my understanding is that because of legal respects in any regard to this matter, he would recuse himself and defer any hearing of this matter to the deputy supervisor. And I also took the opportunity to speak with the deputy supervisor, who expressed no objections, and then we agreed that the rules of order would be in effect. And with that, I wanted to make a few corrections and then get on with some clarifications. In the petition that I had drafted, I mistakenly stated that it would be on the agenda this evening, and I was informed that it cannot be on the agenda. It can be addressed in the public comments section. That's why it's being addressed now. One other big mistake that I made in the petition was that I referred that it would be directed to the attention of the town code enforcement officer, the mistake there being that this being a DEC matter would be directed to the MS4 officer of the town. In this case, it happened to be the same individual, but a completely different set of hats. And I have gone up the learning curve with this and to have come to the understanding that the town is not really required to have an MS4 officer, but we do have an MS4 officer in this town. And the purpose of the MS4 officer is to act as an immediate liaison to address DEC matters, whereas members of the public in general, if they had a DEC matter and wish to address it to DEC, they might be waiting around for days or weeks, whereas by the town having an MS4 officer, it can be addressed immediately, and has been in this instance. Now, I also need to state that I have no official position in this town. and I'm acting as a private individual, a concerned citizen. I'm also not a paid representative of the neighborhood. I receive no benefit other than the personal gratification that I work in conjunction with my neighbors. We have a good system of neighborliness. I have a very neutral and objective position with respect to the property, which is a construction site located at 290 Snake Hill Road. Now, the reason why I drafted this petition, which is in the possession of our town board members and our town attorney and also our MS4 officer, the reason why I've done it is because I live in direct vicinity of this project, which has been going on now since the very early part of December last year. And there have been a lot of neighbors who have been asking me questions about it, rightly so, because I live right next door to it and because they know that I'm a neighborly type of person that they can talk to. So with respect to getting everybody on board with the state of what is going on with that project, to the best of my ability, what I have done is I have included the salient elements of this petition such that everybody who would receive the petition would understand what the requirements were, many of which are already being addressed by the operators on that site. So I wrote the petition to keep ourselves uniformly aware of that progress. Many of the stipulations in that petition have already been addressed or are being addressed at this time. And the property has also been subjected to 2 on-site DEC inspections. And I do not know 100% sure on this, but it is to my understanding and belief that the operator on this property was subject to a stop work order and has subsequently undergone DEC-approved training and has become qualified to continue to do the construction work on this project without having a DEC inspector on site. However, they must comply with all of the SWIP requirements. SWIP is the DEC abbreviation for Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. And it's a really serious item, and it was something which was brought to our attention in a rather strong way actually just a couple of months ago when we had spring thaws and we had a lot of erosion and runoff. Now, to the operator's credit, the operator's been working on this site in December, January, February, March, cold months when the ground's frozen. Got to give the operators credit for that. While many of us were enjoying just being able to have the comfort of our whatever areas where we work in, there's been a lot of diligence on site. And there has been skillful operation of the equipment, and there has been a lot of creativeness. The petition that I drafted does clearly state that the description of this construction site might be termed as a steep mountainside boulder field on clay, a very difficult site to create what is now quite obviously a building lot. I would take the liberty of saying it kind of looks like one of those, the old saying goes, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's taken, I think it's taken a lot of courage, a lot of dedication for the operators to perform as far as they have on this site. However, it's been quite an uphill battle for them, and there has been confrontation between the operators and DEC. And so far as I can see right now, there's been quite a bit of dedication towards coming into DEC compliance and to abide by the terms of the SWIP. Now, these are good signs. But the neighbors that I am being questioned by, the neighbors who are bringing to me suggestions and concerns, I think are very well warranted. And the reason why is I'm going to say that the purpose of this petition, which gets it really puts some teeth in place in sections 11I and 11J, which quite frankly is right into the operator's face. It gets right into the operator's pocketbook, and sections 11I and J of the petition call for the town to consider implementing terms whereby there would be signs placed on the property indicating that it is not an approved building lot. I don't know if this can legally be done, but I'll tell you in a moment the reason why this is a general consensus amongst ourselves as neighbors as to why we would like to see that happen. Another very salient aspect of this petition is to request of the town to legally place a restriction against the transfer of the owner of this ownership of this property until all terms of the SWIP have been satisfied. The reason for this is that it is entirely possible, or at least very plausible, that someone who might be looking for an area where they could be building a mountain home could look at this site, want to buy it, arrive at a price, and be left holding the bag. This has happened before. Now, the reason why I'm going to draw emphasis to this is because many of the people in this room are probably not old enough, or maybe we're not in this town about 30 years ago when we had the whole Minkin crisis going on. And it's right straight across the road from there. And those of us who live in that neighborhood are constantly reminded of the consequence of an unfinished project. This project at number 290 Snake Hill Road may very well be completed straight through into fruition, but there is that chance. It can be sold and left uncompleted. And that's the one thing that we really don't want to see. We consider it our own personal responsibility to try to get out ahead of that kind of an occurrence happening. If that should happen, there's a likelihood that whoever the new property owner could be would be left with a bunch of treetops, a bunch of logs, a bunch of unfinished grading going on there, and a continuation of a crop likened to that which we have an ongoing experience with on the old Minkin property. And I can guarantee you that if you walk on that property, you're going to find ruts, pits, erosion, out of control brush, etc., which is a minor environmental disaster. So the people that I speak in representation of are asking for me to appeal before the town board and see if there is any legal means by which we can place restrictions against property ownership transfer before the project is completed and satisfying all of the SWIP requirements. So that is my presentation, and it is my request. Obviously, I realize that this is not an agenda item, but I am asking the town board to give this some consideration, and that if it is within the board's purview, that this would become an agenda item. I will be available to assist in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to give, what I've learned about this process is that, and Lee said it, is that this is a DEC issue, not necessarily I should say DEC has the authority in this case, because there has been the moving of of land and dirt over an acre. That's when DEC came in and put a stop work order in. As Lee mentioned, Tracy is our code enforcement and also our MS4 representative. I spoke with Tracy, and this is really, at this level, it's an issue between the property owner and DEC because of the erosion problem that was mentioned. A lot of dirt was going where it shouldn't be going. And so as Lee said, and Tracy had mentioned to me, that the owners are, or the operators are working to correct this problem. And it seems that we're heading in the right direction. As far as Lee's two questions here, I don't know if, because you're asking number one about the building lot and whether or not it's transferred. And we actually had this problem over on Algonquin Beach Road recently, where someone bought a piece, I should say recently, probably about 2 years ago, where someone bought a piece of land ready to build and found out that they couldn't build because it was in a similar, I don't know, it was, I can't remember what it was, but basically they were like kind of in a swamp, and so they wasted, like, it took them a lot longer than they expected, so they didn't know what they were buying, I guess. I think that's a conversation us to probably have with Andy and figure out what our options are.
Sure, if I can just say at this point, I would concur. Legitimate concerns without a doubt, but generally is not a town board issue. At this point, it sounds like it's a DEC issue, and to a certain extent, an administrative issue with your MS4 officer in coordination with DEC. I do note I've been provided a copy with the department correspondence indicating that the SWIP has been prepared, and there is what's called a notice of intent having been filed, that there is now a requirement that the site comply with the general stormwater permit for construction activities, that DEC, and DEC will make sure that that meets compliance and has appropriate oversight, even if they're not doing daily or periodic inspections. There is a requirement that inspections be performed and that inspection reports are maintained and are submitted to the department upon request. So the site at this point, given that DEC has become involved, does have appropriate state regulatory, and to the extent MS4 is involved, municipal regulatory authority over that. There does need to be compliance with site stabilization and compliance with the SWIP. So that will be in place. And in terms of the ability to, if I can paraphrase, like walk away from the site, whatever entity, person or entity, did file that notice of intent, it remains an open permit. They cannot legally walk away from the site until what's called a notice of termination is filed. That closes out the permit. So there is still legal, regulatory oversight over the holder of that permit until such time as the site is completed and a notice of termination is filed to close out compliance under the state stormwater permit for construction activity. So with that, any issue about restraint on transferability of property, we'll review that, and I'll go over that with the board.
Anything else, Lee?
Oh, I was just questioning as to whether any of the terms of the notice of intent would be applied to the deed of the property.
No, it's a separate regulatory program, the state stormwater program. It's a state general permit for construction activities. It's a separate legal concept from deed ownership.
So is there actually a real conduit there such that the owner of the property cannot sell the property until such time as the terms of the SWIP are completed?
No, the holder of, the way the state program works is the holder, the permit holder, the entity that's filed a notice of intent to comply with the state general stormwater permit remains legally responsible to implement and complete the stormwater improvements on that site. It's not tied to ownership. It is tied to the permit holder. And as such, the state has legal authority over that permit holder to require them to complete the stormwater implementation on the site.
Well, maybe we'll get a chance to speak at some time when I don't really eat up a lot of the regular time work.
It's very difficult, by the way.
It's a new one, yeah, I didn't realize it.
It's very difficult to make sure that the site is in full compliance and submit the notice of termination. And on those forms, both the notice of intent and notice to terminate must be signed off by the municipal MS4 in order to be submitted to the department. So there are things in place to make sure that the site still stays in compliance with applicable stormwater requirements.
I'm aware of that, and I appreciate and respect that. I just have some other underlying concerns, and I wish to be able to get back in touch with the people that I'm taking a liberty to speak for right now before I continue this conversation any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Well, we have the minutes to adopt first. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, just a request that, again, if you've got topic of speeding in the town, passenger, light truck, and large trucks, but can something be done? Be it sheriff, increased or increased state patrol, state police patrol at firehouse and other points, trying to slow traffic, because it's just getting worse and worse and worse. You know, it's summer, and there's more people on Main Street, on corners, and Middlewacks, if something can be done, please. Because it's out there, it's a problem. This intersection is becoming somewhat dangerous. It's always been dangerous, but maybe a little more so where people come through. And I think that, you know, even just talking with the state police, talking with the sheriff's department, increased patrol, increased radar. So Postal Field gets a bad rap. Gee, you guys don't want to go fast. So what? Rather have safety than people speeding up and down the streets. Thank you.
I will say that I travel that road every single solitary morning, and 9 times out of 10 maybe and stuff, there's a sheriff or sitting at the firehouse.
In the mornings, yes, they are,
Yeah.
they are there. And if they would just try and catch somebody once going over, and it would, I'm sorry, excuse me for not saying that.
But Tom, that would be me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. But, you know, you catch a few people and word gets around.
The speeds that you go, I can't even believe you see them.
Well, Tom, you're lucky we have a state trooper tonight, our hero passed on. We pass it out, please.
We only had the amount of personnel we need to do that. Fortunately, everybody low everywhere.
Okay, you want to go?
Yeah.
All right.
Public comment. Last April, we had a resident come before us about the lack of internet service on 351. It's not only on 351, there are other areas on the hill too that don't have service, but I sent in a request to Charter Communications, which is Spectrum for us, about what it would cost. The internet ends, if you're familiar with coming from the Four Corners, just about at the Historical Society, house past there. So they sent out field operations to do a study, and it would take approximately 1 mile of work to go from Booby Way to Jones Road. They said the state road, it's more expensive to do a build out on the state road because of permitting. They may only have 7 potential customers. Depends on the number of poles that they may need to replace and the underground work to be done. They will not take responsibility for any of the costs. The cost would be approximately $163,800 to the town. The only other thing that they could suggest is in the state budget, there's a section to Connect and All initiative. And Charter is going to participate in that venture, but all of the information hasn't been forthcoming yet. There'll be grant programs for municipalities, but it'll take a while. So that's what I found out so far.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have the town clerk's minutes from May 12th. Entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion. Do we approve them?
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have also the May 25th minutes.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation tonight from the Shoeharts. Please, go forward.
So spot where I went best to set up this.
Probably right over here, so everybody in the audience can see it as well.
I apologize, I'm gonna have advantage of this.
Steve Hart with Hart Engineering. I was in front of this board, I think it was two and a half years ago. Certainly here tonight on behalf of John and Sandy Schuhart. The map, I dropped some off the town hall about a month ago, so I think the board members do have a copy of the map that we're going to present here. Basically, just to update the board, the map that you see here is very similar to what we had shown, again, a couple years back. It's a 56-acre parcel of land that encompasses this area back here. John and Sandy's house is situated a little bit to the west, and their farm. What you see highlighted on this map is what we are calling a 24-acre parcel of land that was representing the PDD. 24 acres, which what we were hoping would be a maximum of 48 units of senior housing. It was a 2-story building situated in this L shape that you see here. Again, pretty much identical to what we had 2 years ago, other than we were looking at a site access point down here, which is further east on the site, on the south and easterly corner. We were having some issues at the time with site distance, looking potentially about trying to get easements or to purchase some land to the east of us. But instead, what we have done is we now took that entranceway that was situated here, and we've moved it over to the westerly part of our site. The downside of that, cost of that road coming in, but also where you see this crossing, this blue shade here, this is DEC wetland. So any crossing will require permitting from the DEC for this. We met last week with both DOT and with VHB, who was a traffic consultant that we worked with 2 years ago, just to measure up the site distance. We are hoping to have that report tonight. Probably within the next few days, we will have it. But the site distance issues there are much improved, and we will show that within a report. And as soon as we get that, we'll forward a PDF copy over to town hall. Aside from that, there is a water line situated out here on the highway, so the intent is just to tap the water line. So that's a relatively straightforward connection to service the building. We are proposing an on-site septic field that will be designed and approved per county health department standards. Right now, we're showing a couple different areas where that may be. We have not finalized that design yet. We'll be working with the county health department on that. And then we're showing a couple areas here, which would be like placeholders that we're showing for where the stormwater, the SWIP, the guidelines and the ponds would be constructed on this site. We do intend to have probably some underground detention systems as well. These ponds may take care of what they call the water quality and runoff reduction volume that we need to meet, but we're intending that we would have some underground detention systems here. And then after the water is detained, the water is treated, we would then be able to release it down on the lower portions of the land. We do have topography, as you can imagine. The building here is situated on top of the hill. Everything drains down graded into the blue shades of the area that you see on the map. So aside from that, we had worked through some of the PDD process last time, and then certainly with COVID and with other things here, we probably lost 2 years in the process. So we're here in front of the board tonight to hopefully get this process reinitiated and work our way through the process again for that. So aside from that, certainly if there's questions the board members may have.
Well, as I understand, we forwarded it to the planning board.
Yes, we were to go in front of the planning board,
But because of the time lapse, they wanted us to come
to
in front
come
of you
in
again.
front of you again
And
to
then
have
restart the
it
time.
done to the planning board to continue.
Well,
So this is, total is 56 acres, right?
That is correct.
And this is
24 out of the 56. And the density that we applied for was 2 units per acre, so it was 2 times the 24 acres.
have you talked to anybody about crossing the wetlands?
We have not. This just came about probably within the last month. DEC does. It's a strenuous process with DEC, but they do allow you to cross wetlands. They may have us mitigate areas, create other wetland areas to compensate. We're thinking about 6,000 square feet, so a little more than 1/10 of an acre. Basically, this is about a 200-foot stretch through here. We're figuring we'd probably be, even though the road may be 20 to 24 foot wide, we're going to disturb 30-foot width, maybe a little bit bigger than that. So that's the kind of area that we're looking at.
And you can't come out this side of it because of the site distance?
Because of the site distance. We have got this horizontal curve, if you can see the shape of 355 through here. So we've got the horizontal curve, but we also got a vertical curve. So we're sort of battling two issues out there.
Do you have any idea of how many square feet is in the parking lot?
We had figured all told that we had about 5 acres of disturbance here. We've got 50,000 square foot of building, which is about 25,000 square foot per level. And we are showing about 54,000 square foot of concrete or blacktop area. So about 1.2 acres of asphalt and concrete.
It looks like the parking lot's about 60, or about 120 feet off of the road.
So we're on a 60 scale. So yeah, probably, I'd say about 90 to 100 feet in this furthest area here, close to the road. And then most of it, again, the building, and aside from this area here, the building's probably 180 feet off the road. This area here might be within, the closest point might be about 90 feet off the road. But the bulk of the parking lot, probably 150 feet off.
Andy, since we've already forwarded this to the planning board, is there a necessity that we do it again?
We were here really more just to update this board and not quite familiar with how long the time had passed. Certainly, if there's nothing this board needs to do and we can go direct to the planning board, we're more than happy to do so.
Unfortunately, haven't had the chance to review the prior record on this, but in the event this board has formally referred it, that's the first step under your code, to the planning board for review and recommendation, and it's still technically pending there. Based on those set of facts, you wouldn't need to. It's been a while, presumably COVID or otherwise.
Yeah.
While the project has not proceeded through the review, given the time lapse here, if there's any need to update the environmental assessment form or anything of that nature, just to make sure that the information that would have been in that is still current and is not dated, that'd be appropriate, and get that from the planning board into this board. And then I'd certainly like the chance to review. Do you know when this first came in, did this board retain any particular review consultants for the town board?
I, for one, it was September 11th, 2019, that it was received by the town clerk. So I just finally found my copy last night. So it has been a while. I would think that maybe it would be prudent that we look at things again, especially since now they changed the drive.
There's nothing prohibiting you from making sure the town board reviews the current information, any updates to the environmental assessment form, consider whether the board should retain any review consultants in conjunction with this PDD project, which generally happens with PDD reviews. Make sure the board is current on the current proposal, and then send them back to the planning board to continue and complete the review and recommendation. That's certainly within the board's discretion too.
What I would suggest is, since you really have some groundwork to do with the wetlands anyway, that you give us a month or so to do a further review, and the board look at it, and the Andy look at it. And if there's any new requirements, we can let you know. Right now, see, I don't know of any, but that's all we have, Andy.
Perfect. We do have an updated long form EAF that Sandy just signed tonight.
Okay.
This is a 13-page document. Really what changed is our last proposal, we had no wetland impacts. We have wetland impacts now. So there's 2 or 3 line items in here that we had to modify. I was gonna send a PDF to Tiffany tomorrow, but I'm happy either to leave a copy here or we can get her the copy of this long form.
There should be original on file here, but if you could send it by PDF, that'd be
Okay.
great. So
Can I leave this here tonight or would you like I said?
Just give it to Sue.
do you know if this had been referred to the county?
I honestly don't
Okay,
recall.
we'll review that too. This is something that needs to be reviewed by the county.
Any other questions, anyone?
I read through everything, but I was looking at it on my phone last night, so it was very difficult. Is this 2 stories or 3 stories?
2 stories.
Well, thank you. It's really not a public hearing. Sorry. I mean, if you have a question,
Yeah,
come to
just
the
a
board
question,
later.
how long is the driveway gonna be now, coming in off of, the west side?
So it's probably about 500 feet.
Okay.
Would need to be designed to meet New York State Fire Code, certainly for the length of it, the width of it, the slope that we would have on it, so.
I'll make sure there's a map available, so if anybody wants to review the map and give us comments, that's fine, but they really, it's not a public hearing, so I think we just move on.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. We have correspondence from Charter, but June's already addressed those. That brings us to our liaison reports, and first up is the planning board. Is anyone from the planning board that would like to represent the planning board?
Planning board meeting we held the other night, and we busy schedule. First item we had was the venue proposal at 278 and 282 Factory Road by Mr. and Mr. Langley and Nancy Orsini. After consulting with Bob Ryan and doing various work, it was deemed that it'd be under retail services since they're in section of their zone RR2, and they will be coming back with a site plan review at our July meeting. That's what we have to work on next, as opposed to SUP. Next item was a gentleman at 32 the Gateway, just up a little farther on the Factory Road, looking for a two-lot minor subdivision. He will be coming back in July, but with a better map to show exactly where he plans on cutting out 2 acres for his son. Third person was Michael Casal, but his father, Charlie Casal, community representative, looking for a two-lot minor subdivision on a property that they own at the corner of Snyder's Corners and Route 66. There was questions back and forth as far as the amount of wetlands, which was not specified on the survey that we had. And there was also a question about an old Army Corps of Engineer letter, that was sent to Mr. Casal. Warren Fane Trucking and Callahan Industries come up for SUP renewal to match the DEC permit that was recently issued to Warren Fane, and Callahan is also picking up on one. Warren Fane's would be 5 years out. Callahan would be until December of 2023. That is when their permit with DEC expires, and they'll be coming back in again December of 2023 to renew. We talked a little bit about activities in True Hearts, so that was coming up before us, and that in the comprehensive plan is a little bit of information that Jeff broke out, and that's basically it. We're not aware of any other new developments in town going on at present time, but if anybody actually has any information, please pass it along.
Thank you, Tom.
Questions? Thank you for listening.
Zoning board? You have a representative?
Nobody here yet. Last meeting, we had 2 area variance requests before the board. One was for Susan Martin, 56 Cherokee Lane. And it was for a garage, which was approved. The second area variance was for a solar array at 1188 Plank Road. That was continued to the next meeting. Evidently, they're modifying some aspects of this, going from a ground mount to a roof mount. I think right now it's still in the planning stage. That's about it. The board did elect to start holding their meetings on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. Give some space between the planning board and the zoning board for anybody who's referred to the zoning board for an application.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Next up is the fire company.
Calls for the month of May, we had 19 EMS calls, 10 fire calls, 0 DNRs. for a total of 29 calls for the month. Calls to date, 125 with 0 did not respond.
Thank you. Library?
The library had Market Day in person this spring on May 14th. It was very successful. We will have a fall market day in September, and then in October, we'll have a jigsaw puzzle sale. That's been a big draw for people, so we're glad to get back into business with those efforts. The summer reading program is gearing up starting next week. There'll be lots of prizes and reading incentives for the whole family. And we're continuing petition gathering as part of the 414 process.
Thank you for giving us the estimates for the roof. We got the estimates finally, and thank you for that. Youth Advisory, Tiffany's out here, but we do have a list of counselors to approve. Everyone has it. A lot of these names are the past counselors we've had in the past. There's a few new ones, but for the most part, they're renewals. I'd like to entertain a motion to propose our camp counselors. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're moving right along with camp. We haven't met to decide who qualifies for the scholarships yet, but that's coming up. We'll meet with the supervisor, Tiffany, the supervisor, Sand Lake, myself, and Tiffany, and we'll go through the list of who's applied for the scholarships and decide who gets them, I guess. It's the only fair way we thought we could do it. CAC? Okay. Discussion items. Our first one is the paper streets. We had Andy do a draft for us and got the final. And as far as I know, it's been forwarded to your attorney and there's been no objection. So I guess we're ready to vote on it.
It is, it's in final form in front of you, and again, the town, I'll give the highway department credit too, spent a lot of time on this, analyzing this and working on this as well. Identify certain of the paper streets that would be abandoned, others would not, that's delineated in the resolution. It's really,
I need help with the word.
what's that?
And then now therefore resolved.
Number 1?
Yeah.
Oh, the recital clauses. So all the initial whereas clauses, technically called recital clauses, because they went through all the kind of factual work and that the highway department and we did on this, spelling out what was done, they should become substantive parts of the resolution. In general, as a concept, all these whereas clauses, they sound nice and flowery. They don't really have any meat. A phrase like that says these really will have substance and they're part of the substantive provisions. And then the second part obviously is under the highway law, section 205(1). You're identifying the paper streets that the board would formally command.
So do I just read the now therefore be resolved?
Yes.
Okay. Now for there be resolved by the town board of the town of Posenkill in its regular session duly convened as follows. Recital clause of this resolution as set forth above and Exhibit A and B attached here to are hereby incorporated into the body of this resolution as substantive provisions. Pursuant to New York State Highway Law, Section 205-1, those portions of such paper streets located in the town of Posenkill and
As depicted.
as depicted in Exhibit B here too, as Parcel 2 and Parcel 3, and such extent and area only are deemed abandoned as a matter of law. Foregoing resolution is offered by motion by Eric Walberg and seconded by Harold Van Slyke. Stu, will you do an oral vote?
Councilwoman Butler?
Yes.
Councilman Haas?
Yes.
Councilman Van Slyke?
Yes.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Supervisor Hand?
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was simple, right?
So
what number
resolution
was that?
13.
13, and 3.
Thank you.
One.
Thank you. For the last 2 months, we've had the Hudson Mohawk issue of whether we're going to deal with cats or not. It was my understanding that we weren't going to deal with cats.
So I'll update the board. I did have a chance to sit down with an adjacent municipality's town attorney facing the same issues, who has not yet acted on this proposed amendment. Certainly the way we read the Ag and Markets Law, and we do concur on this, that the inclusion, with all due respect, the inclusion of cats, if picked up as a stray, abandoned, or injured animal by the town's animal control officer or by a police officer and brought to a shelter, the Ag and Markets Law in that case does require the town to pay the full 5-day redemption fee. The issue with the proposed contract change by Mohawk Hudson is they've included not just animal control officer or police officer, but have included the term and resident of the town, which under the contract, the town would agree if anyone picked up the stray cat and brought it to the shelter, the town would be responsible for the fees until the 5-day redemption period expires. I don't view that as a requirement of the Ag and Markets Law. But having said that, understand Ag and Markets Law does require municipalities to have shelters uptown, particularly for stray or vicious dogs, but for these types of stray animals as well. If you do not contract with an existing shelter, municipalities are obligated still to maintain their own. And that's very costly. It's costly just from an operation and maintenance standpoint and insurance standpoint. So as a matter of contract, municipalities will contract with these shelters. Most do contract with Mohawk Hudson. While it may not be, the way I read it, a legal requirement for these extra 2 days of redemption period for cats, and it's certainly not a requirement, as I read it under the state law, for any resident to drop off a stray cat shelter, there is a certain practical approach, which is the issue may not, quite frankly, come up all that often. It probably, although who knows, may not be a significant economic issue. Is it a legal requirement as we read it under the state Ag and Markets Law? No. Can the municipality still agree through contract with the facility to make those payments? Yes, you can. Do I think Mohawk Hudson has gone beyond what may be required for a municipality under the Ag and Markets Law? Maybe, but still has proposed this as an amendment. You have an existing agreement with Mohawk Hudson. This is a proposed amendment for this year to it. I think, again, as a practical approach, if this is not agreed to by the municipality for that provision that says any resident may drop it off, it may become an issue with renewing your annual contract for 2023, which does place a fairly significant burden on any municipality because it does need to comply with Ag and Markets Law in terms of having a shelter.
If Ag and Markets doesn't say resident though, can't we just cross that out and initial it?
You could, but I'm not, absolutely you could. I don't know that Mohawk Hudson would
Accept
agree
it,
to that.
but we
Right.
could try.
Sure.
I have a problem with picking up, we have a dog control officer. We don't have an animal control officer in town.
Regardless of the name, correct.
He doesn't deal with cats. He doesn't deal with deer. He doesn't deal with birds. He deals with dogs. That's it. He has he's been more than amenable to this town. If we get a dog, he takes it to his home and finds the owner, and it rarely ever gets to the point where it gets to the animal or to Mohawk Hudson.
Yep.
He's not gonna pick up cats. He's made it very clear to me, he's not going to pick up cats. And honestly, I don't like the idea that Hudson Mohawk holds this over our head.
Again, the proposed amendment does say the Society Mohawk Hudson will provide and maintain a municipal shelter for dogs seized under section 117 of the Ag and Markets Law. That's the abandoned or vicious dogs. And local municipal laws or ordinances, any local dog or animal control law, as well as stray or at-large dogs and cats brought to the society by the officers, animal control officer, police officer, and residents of the municipality. So that's their proposed language. Could you strike "and residents," initial it and send it back? You can. It's not clear whether the society would agree to that. And then it may become an issue when you renew in 23. That's just both legal and practical approach.
I wouldn't worry about the renewal until the time for the renewal. Just say no.
If he's not gonna take the cats, then they're not gonna come from the animal control officers, so the only one, if we cross out resident, then the only one that would bring in cats would be like a police
Well, there's no
officer.
additional cost here at this point, but there will be next year, I almost guarantee it.
Well, we can shop around for a different shelter.
Well, what does the board like to do? What's do you want to cross out?
Or just not do the amendment. Say no.
Just say no. Amen. That's what I say.
Well, I'm in favor of that. I just, we'll send them a letter saying thank you, but we reconsidered your.
And possibly readdress it on the next annual renewal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Andy. I know that was a lot of work for what we thought was something very simple.
Those stray cats, they're important too, right?
Now, I don't have it.
Good man.
I don't have our next one on in my packet other than this. Does everybody have this?
No,
It's local law tax exemption.
which isn't that.
Oh, no, this is a little bit different.
That's the-
So I can update, but on the issue of the tax exemptions, again, that's in process. I'm working on that with the county and with the town assessor.
All right, so we don't really have to do anything with that.
That's in process, and the county has let me know that there's no immediate urgency to that. I do want to progress that and get it done, but there's no immediate urgency to addressing the tax exemption issue.
Okay, our next one is codifying our code book. There was an amount here and I can't find it.
What's the next one?
Between $1,465 and $1,790.
That's how much they're estimating. They're not giving us an exact number. Can we go ahead with this as a, give them the approval? We talked about at our last meeting that we really need to update the code. This is just the beginning. There's going to have to be more.
I think that was the discussion, that there were other items that needed to be changed, so I think that's gonna take a while, so we should probably go ahead.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to pay $1,790 as a maximum. All in favor? All right, thank you. We already did this on the camp counselors. The second mailer, we talked about this a little bit. Eric, maybe you wanna, did you have more conversation, or maybe June?
I did not have a conversation about the mailings.
Well,
Have the breakdowns, I think.
yeah, we have the breakdowns of the addresses and,
Because I think the last time when it was in error, let's say, and some residents didn't get the notices, Terry Kirsch stepped back and was gonna let Tiffany handle it with Mailworks.
well, this is what
I think
Tiffany
this
got
is
as far as a
like for
price
the
of
total, right.
$1,655. $1,655.
estimated total.
I got 2,772 dollars.
Well, that's with, I think there's 2 districts here, 2 different areas.
That's the number of people, the number of records, 2,772 records.
Well, you want to go forward with the second mailer?
They're gonna have 2 more meetings. They have gotten approval from the 2 churches that they were held in before, so there's gonna be another 2 meetings. It'll be in the Advertiser again, it'll be in the Eastwick again. I don't know about the mailer, but people feel it's necessary to send that out.
Well, the reason we brought this forward is because there were a number of people that were left out of the first mailer,
Correct.
and we didn't think it was fair that they were left out, and we thought we could do a better job, so here it is.
I agree.
All right, so, do I have a motion to spend a maximum of $1,655.04?
Are we gonna take this from the ARPA funds?
Yes.
Okay. I think we should just be clear about where it's coming from.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
Thank you, everyone. It's just, well, I already mentioned that we have 3 estimates for the roof. We got another one in today, I believe, a 3rd one. If you guys can review them, and we can, at our next meeting, pick one. Abandoned buildings, this is you, Eric.
No action tonight. We, Betsy had some comments, sent them to Andy. I didn't get him told yesterday or the day before, so he's updated it, and we were gonna wait to see, give Betsy some time to look at it, so we can discuss this. We can table this till next one. So,
Okay. Next up is reports, supervisor reports. Honestly, it was a really busy month. I had an awful lot of meetings. We need to schedule a meeting after the 4th of July in Labarge so that they can come to the public and us and give us an update as to where we are. I know they were gonna meet with the school again. I hadn't heard anything back from them since our initial meeting. Other than the fact that Mr. Delgado's office forwarded our member item. He was the only one that got back to us. I gotta be honest with you, I am kind of disappointed that our other representatives didn't even acknowledge that we asked, knowing that we were struggling here. At any rate, this one, Delgado did forward it, and I guess it's gonna stay going forward, even though he's no longer a representative, and he's the deputy, or whatever it is, lieutenant governor. So that's the only good news I have on that front. I think that's about it. Attorney's report?
Well, in general, aside from routine matters, we did have a special meeting on the Paper Street abandonment. We did do some follow-up work on that and had the resolution for this evening. Did work a bit on the vacant building issue, and that will continue. Obviously worked on the Mohawk Hudson proposed agreement and met with an adjoining municipality's attorney to review that and did some research on that. Had the opportunity to look at those grading issues on the property that we discussed earlier. And aside from that, just routine.
I'd also like to thank Andy for meeting with Bob Burnett and I during the week to talk about the way we are handling the money from our water district. And after meeting with Andy and Bob, we're going to stay the course till our next budget cycle, and we can make some changes then if we deem them necessary. But after sitting down and going through it all, we're just going to stay the course. So, thank you. Town clerk's report.
During the month of May, town clerk took in $15,365.15. Of that amount, $14,960.95 was turned over to the supervisor.
Motion accepted. I'll make it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. We all have the assessor's report. you have any questions, you can call Betsy. She's not here tonight. Water Manager, Bob?
It's been a very good month. Frankly, nothing but good news. In addition to that, as far as our performance goes, in addition to that, next Wednesday, we'll be doing the quarterly meter billing, so Sue can send out the bills. I have agreement from the New York Water Association. You know, they were very helpful to us finding a big leak. And I've got agreement now. They have two fellows that I know well. They've done this throughout the country in their 30 years of experience. They're gonna come in at no charge to us and work with us during the summer for our leak locating. I'm sure that's gonna be profitable. Last item, nothing for you to do, but I've talked about the lead copper rule revision rule. And there's a program that is coming into effect. Actually, it's in effect right now. It just started 23 and 24. It requires a full inventory of every facility we have, including, you've heard me say this before, first time, into the curb stop and beyond the curb stop, into the residence. So you know where that's going in the future. A lot of work. It's not gonna cost us any money from the town perspective. It's only administrative work. That's the bottom line. And we're staying on top of it.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for meeting with us during the week. Building Inspector, Tracy's not here with us tonight. He turned 62 years old today and he's off for that party. Dog Control Officer, you have his report. I guess I'm not gonna be able to call him Dog Control Officer anymore. Highway Superintendent's report?
Is there any more discussion on the proposal that was given to you 2 weeks ago
Well, you gave us two.
About the asphalt.
for the black?
And the bridge.
Yeah, the black.
You're gonna pick one.
No, we picked one last week and you guys are gonna discuss it and come back to us today.
Well, that wasn't my understanding.
I didn't,
What are you asking for then, I guess?
For you to prioritize, we only have so much money.
Right, we gave you a proposal for the blacktop.
Yeah, but you also came to us with the bridge that was.
Well, yeah, it got yellow flag, but we don't have any more info on that at this time. We're still waiting on Wayne.
All right, well, then I guess, go ahead, I'm sorry.
just my personal opinion and everything, I just think that we're taking on more liability, possible liability if something happens with that bridge because of the tanker trucks that are using it and going over, so.
Wayne and I met on the road and structurally the bridge is sound in his opinion. It just has small minor things that need to be fixed. We're waiting on the plans from DOT to be able to direct that correction.
So we're not talking,
No.
because at the last meeting.
That you thought that was.
We hadn't
gonna
met on the location yet. I was just going off.
Well, that's what we're waiting on. We didn't know what the. All right, well, when you get the report and if it turns out it's not gonna be as expensive as we thought it would be, we'll move on to that asphalt. How soon do you have to know for the asphalt?
And the longer you wait, the more the price goes up. So by the month.
Well, how long do you think it'll be before you have a report for us on the bridge?
Depends on how quick Wayne moves with the plans. I mean, I don't know. There's no time frame
Did
on it.
you, because you had to go to the county because you couldn't
The
get it
state,
here,
yeah.
right, called the state, so they think they do have.
They're not sure. They're looking, but it's often their discretion. So I don't have a time frame for it, unfortunately.
I really think the bridge takes priority. We have to.
Well, we might be able to do both if it comes back cheap enough. I mean,
Yeah, I would prefer to do both.
Yeah, no, that'd be ideal. But
well, do you want me to call Wayne
no,
or,
you know, there's nothing for you to do. I'm just telling you, we're waiting on DOT.
oh, you're waiting on DOT? Right. All right, well, thank you. Transfer of funds, I don't believe we have any. Seeing none, payment of bills,
I move that we pay the town and highway bills of $24,216.72.
have a second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
And I don't have any water bills.
Jim, do you have a water bill in yours? In the original abstract, Tiffany said there was a water attached.
I don't think so.
I don't have one.
Well, we'll just have to not do that one tonight. We have an executive session necessity tonight. After we come out of this executive session, is there anything that we're going to be voting on? No? Then, seeing none, I'm going to close the meeting. Oh,
It's, under section 7, we skip item B.
well, there's,
And as a public comment, how much did that whole thing cost the town, money-wise?
well, we don't know because the insurance company is in the insurance company's hands, so until they settle, we aren't gonna know.
Well, what was the outcome of it?
We haven't had an outcome yet.
We keep putting it on the agenda.
We put it on the agenda because we're thinking that we're going to have an agreement before us, because we had a tentative agreement. And quite frankly, Mr. Hitchcock would like to operate after 6 and 7 o'clock, and it's a stumbling block.
So it's not resolved, is what you're saying?
No, they keep asking for extensions, and as long as the judge gives them extensions, there's nothing the town board can do about it. I was told that this was going to be the last extension granted, but, you know, until we have something in our hands, we don't know.
Okay.
I know what the tentative agreement is, but I'm not at liberty to go into detail about it. And the price, we'll know when it's done, but our portion so far to date is retainer of an attorney for Tracy and our amount that we have to pay towards the total bill that the insurance doesn't pick up.
Do we have an update on the PFOAs?
No.
No update?
Nothing that you haven't been sent. The only update is I already gave you is where our member items are.
And I'd also like to state that the fire company is sponsoring 2 children for the summer camp.
Thank you. When you say sponsoring, you're sponsoring a week or 2 kids for a whole?
It's full term.
Full term.
Okay, that's quite a bit, already. Thank you.
And
The only speculation we put in there had to be posted to residents.
Okay, that's a stumbling block.
that's a what?
We're not requiring the Doors of Hope or Kiwanis or any of the other people to say it's only going to be Sand Lake people. And I can tell you the majority of the scholarships we're getting are not from Postal.
This is, I've already talked to Tiffany, and we've already picked out.
I can tell you that we can make sure that Postal people get the scholarships, but I'm not going to start saying only this town, that this kids from this town, that town, because they'll do the same in Sand Lake.
Well, this has nothing to do with the town. This is the fire company sponsoring the kids.
We're sponsoring 2 kids for the length of the summer program, and they have to be post-and-kill kids. That's all we're sponsoring.
All right.
Now, if there's gonna be a stumbling block, say it now.
I just did. I'm saying that you are the only ones putting the requirement on.
The director didn't seem to think there was a problem.
Well, it's not a problem in fact, but it's a problem in wording. There's going to be plenty of kids from Postal that are going to have scholarships, and I'm sure at least 2 kids from Postal are going to get scholarships. But if you start putting stipulations on it, don't think that everybody else is going to do the same thing.
I think if I remember correctly, though, the Post and Kill Business Association did the same thing last time around, that they said that it was going to be a Post and Kill resident.
Yep. It's gonna be, or it's either or nothing, you know?
Company gave the stipulation of what they're going to do, had nothing to do with the summer camp at all, had to do with the recommendation from the fire company. Same thing as with the, your town businessmen's association last year. This is a policy that we've been following.
Well, I can't stop you from having the policy. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us in the ass when everyone else decides to do it and post-kill kids lose out because we don't have enough scholarships to post-kill to cover the number of kids we have in post-kill.
Well, I think if there is a problem, you can go back to the fire department and they'll redirect your recommendation.
Okay,
And one other thing, you talked about, you approved your $1,600 for the mailing. And I don't know why you didn't want to take advice from them. We do mailing for $100, and we get everybody in the town.
okay, thank you for your input, but, well, we had a public comment period, and now we're just doing it again.
Don't we have it at the end of the?
Yeah, you usually open it up at the
Okay.
end. So that's one public comment.
Is there anything else?
$1,500 more than what you had to. You could have got it for $100.
Well, we didn't think it was the same list, but it's all right. We have a difference of opinion.
No, we know what we meant.
Well, I know what you have and I know what we have. Anyone else? Thank you.
Make a motion, I don't executive session.
Well, yep. Do I have a second? All in favor? All opposed? All right, guys, thank you for your time.
I got a little used to it. A little bit.
Let me know.
They want to change?
Well, now we're inviting kids.